more humble.
So it's crazy.
I feel like the internet gave.
Welcome back to another episode of the Think Successfully Room. This is a platform where we focus on building mindset, we building character, bringing value to both you and your people, and aligning your body with your intelligence. I am your host, QB So Effing Amazing. And right now I got a very powerful individual on the side of me right now, Mr. Kevin from the Mentality Unchained podcast. Man, how you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. Appreciate you for inviting me through, Q.
Man, appreciate you for coming, God, man. It's definitely a pleasure, man. And like I was saying, bro, I was on, I'm always browsing the internet looking for different individuals to connect with, very powerful individuals. And I got a question as far as, man, how did you get in the field of, just discussing things like historical and intergenerational trauma?
Well, actually, Q, my background is in mental health. So I have a doctorate in community mental health counseling, also with specialization in traumatology.
Okay.
And so I have an office where I practice therapy. So that's kind of how I got into intergenerational trauma, because I wanted to do the research as far as history and as far as cultural aspects of Black people. And one of the things that I love most is just being able to enlighten Black men of how we have evolved through the years and how we haven't evolved through the years. So that's kind of how I got into the intergenerational trauma piece.
Okay. And man, so when, for those who don't really know the exact definition for historical or intergenerational trauma, like what exactly is intergenerational trauma?
So first of all, trauma in itself is anything that is disruptive to you, that has happened to you, that you've experienced, and it leaves a long-lasting impact on your life. And so you now you couple that with intergenerational trauma or historical trauma, it's being passed along through generations.
Right.
And the thing about it is, most Black people, if not all Black people, I have to say it that way because a lot of Black people will say, well, I haven't dealt with trauma. Well, slavery was a thing, right?
Yeah, facts.
And so things have been passed on through those years that we still carry today.
Right. So you mean, when we talk about slavery, segregation, on a spiritual level, all of that has been tampered with and messed us up at some point. So the reason why that have went from generation to generation is because we have lacked the skill to be able to deal with that, correct?
Absolutely. A lot of the things that we do now, I don't think we kind of go back and think about it is, let's take, for example, I'm just going to put it out there.
Okay.
Let's take an example for, how they used to take the women from the men and make them house indentured servants and stuff like that. And the men had to go out and work, right?
Right.
And
absolutely.
then they started taking the men out of the home. And so now we have these residuals where we're now living in a time where a lot of men are not in the home. And so a lot of those things come from historical factors that we've also lived through that we yet to talk about. And we're just scratching the surface on the evidence of how these things have been perpetual throughout the years.
Man, so if I'm not mistaken, man, at one point, I can't really, put a finger on the time frame, but at one point, welfare, a woman was unable to get welfare unless the man was gone out of the household.
Yeah. And those are things those are systemic issues. The government has made the Black female think and feel that they're there to help them through welfare. And so instead of them actually having a strong Black male in the home, they would rather be on welfare as if they're being protected and being secured by the government. And so those things are really deep rooted right there. But it goes back to that female dealing with some other deeper issues as well as the men that don't want to be there or be present in the home.
So, man, it's I never thought about it that deep as far as the amount of women that does depend on government assistance. And I think, they loyalty lies so deep with the government that they lost the they lost the will to be able to figure out ways to sustain themselves, right? Just assuming that the government was not there to take care of them.
Yeah, and even Q, it even goes as deep. It goes deeper than that because it's a mindset thing, you know. And they develop this fixed mindset of this is all I have, this is all I ever have, and that goes back also to the intergenerational trauma piece. Is the history of that family that woman comes from.
Facts.
If
Absolutely.
if her parents and grandparents have dealt with things in a certain manner, then she's more likely to deal with it the same way. So therefore it becomes a deeper issue.
Yeah, man, it's a cycle, man. It's a miracle when you have dealt with those type of things generation after generation and after generation, and you finally have a child that for some reason, man, this child is just different, man. They powerful, and the light bulb spark. Right. And they begin to wonder, like, man, why was my great-grandmother dealing with this? Or why was my grandmother dealing with that? Why is my mother dealing with that? And it makes sense of, oh, that's because my great-grandmother didn't teach my grandmother, and then my grandmother didn't teach my mother. Yeah. I've
learned to give a lot of our ancestors grace because of the time that they lived in and the things that they had to deal with at that time.
Yeah,
we're in a different era now where we can approach things a lot different. We have more resources. We're a lot more educated. You know, my grandmother, she dropped out of school in 6th grade. My grandfather didn't even go to school, you know what I'm saying? And so, but they worked hard to make sure that I knew the value of education and the power of words.
Right.
And so that's the difference, you know. That's why I try to give them grace, because at the end of the day, they only dealt with what they can deal with, you know. It's the old adage, you know, play the cards you have.
Man, and I know this is kind of off topic, man. Another thing I would say as far as your great grandparents as well is that they were capable of disciplining you in ways that your mother couldn't, you know what I'm saying? So even though they were unable to teach you the things that's useful in society today, I think it's fair to say that the form of discipline that they came with instill something in you to want to better yourself in this society.
Absolutely. I think they've seen the darkest of times that we haven't seen as of yet, as far as just being human. Because humanity itself, man, it deals a lot with people being able to interact with one another. And when you are not as versed or educated, only way you know how to deal with people is through authoritative action. Right. And so instead of actually having a conversation and teaching, and as I was telling you off air, is like every moment is a teachable moment.
Yeah, that's a fact, man. I think with me, man, speaking for myself, man, is that, man, hey, all them times my granny told me to go get them switches and strip them switches, man. Hey, it put something in me, man. It put a fire under me, man. And man, it's something. The discipline now that these kids have is different, man. Yeah. Like, we was forced to go outside. We was forced to, go make connections. Like right now, the internet we got. Just the times we stay in now, if you want to see what your homie doing, you wake up, you don't even do nothing else. You wake up, hop on the computer. Hey, bro, what you want?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? At the time, when we was younger, you know what I'm saying? If I wanted to see what my homie was doing, I had to get up, get in the shower, wash my face, whatever, hop on my bike and actually ride to his house.
Right.
And just hoping that his mom let him come out. And I think in a sense, man, that kind of builds character at the time, man. And it's very important for the children now to be able to build that same exact character.
Yeah, even when I was growing up, I grew up just like that. I mean, man, look, you couldn't come in the house. You know, my granny was like, you stay out and you play, you do this and you do that. Don't come in the house and sit and this. But, again, we have to evolve, but the principles should still be there.
Yeah, facts.
And that right now, those principles are absent, which causes us to lose our kids to lose those principles because we no longer want to do it, right? I remember, saying, I can't wait to be 18 because I thought it was so strict, right? I thought I can do better. I can figure it out on my own. But as I got older, I realized what grandma was talking about she was really trying to teach me.
Man, and it was crazy, and not to cut your wisdom off, man, but I felt like your grandmama, and I could be wrong, but I felt like it got to a point where my grandmamas, mainly my great grandmothers, man, I don't have no more of my great grandmothers to this day, but I'm extremely grateful for being able to experience them in this lifetime, man, because I feel like they knew that they couldn't save my parents, my mother or whatever, but they knew it was still time for me, and they did what they could, and it worked.
I think that's a common pattern in the Black culture, is that most grandparents, they see that they can't save their kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they reach and try to grab the grandkids, and for the most part, I think, you know, that's a noble thing to do, but it puts pressure on them as they age.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, you know, my grandparents running after me, and I'm like, you know, they like 70 years old, and here I am 15, 16 years old. They don't have any business dealing with me. My parents should have been dealing with me.
Right,
you know
that's
what I'm saying?
a fact.
But they loved me enough to say, okay, your mom, your dad didn't do, so I'm gonna make sure you do.
Yeah, man, and I'm extremely grateful for that, man. It's like, even though they was unable to teach you, you know, the things that may be needed in this society, but they instilled discipline in different ways, man.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to the environment, man, do you think that prevents us from being able to heal from trauma?
Absolutely. So I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the South. So those are two different environments, right?
Right.
But they are both set to withhold you. You know, growing up in the projects, you didn't see any way out, right? All you see was violence all the time. Growing up in the South, it was prejudice, racism, all this kind of stuff, right? It wasn't until I was given an opportunity to go outside of that and explore that I knew that I can do more, right?
Right.
And so I always say exploration always leads to expression. If you are able to get out and explore, you'll learn how to express yourself more. And that's something we don't do because we feel like we're caged up.
Yeah, man. And then like you said, that all comes down to your mindset. Being
Absolutely.
one to break out of those shackles mentally. You know what I'm saying? So you said you stayed. How long was you in the projects for before you left?
So I was in the projects from age 4 till 13.
Damn.
And then from 13 until 17, I was in the South, and at that time I left my grandmother home at 17, and you know, still wanted to do my own thing, but I still experienced it. And the thing about experiencing the South at that age between 13 and 17 was I felt like no one could tell me anything.
Right.
So now I'm just as violent as they are. And so when they're being racist, I'm there for it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, my grandparents was like trying to hold me back and hey, you need to calm down. But I had a whole attitude.
Right.
So when you coming at me with some racism stuff, you know, I'm ready. So the timing of my journey dictated, you know, my behavior.
So I want to say, the first thing I want to say is, man, is what traumatized you the most about the projects?
What traumatized me the most was just seeing it every day, man. Like, it was nonstop. Shootings, stabbings, and back then, look, fist fights that's what it was, right?
Right.
We fight today, we fight tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. But it was just so violent, though. You know, then we started using knives.
Right.
You know, my own brother pulled a gun on me,
man.
And so you know, it was like, how do you really deal with that? Like, how do you
process?
Yeah,
same mom
exactly.
and dad.
Same mom, man. And so you know, for how do you process that as a 12, 13-year-old kid? Like, and I had brothers, cousins that were gangsters, disciples, vice lords, you know, four corner, and I'm like, pulling at me like, where you going? You know, which direction you going to? And so I'm like, I chose to try to just go my own way, but I always had to fight because I was always being pulled in 3 different directions.
Man, I can honestly say myself, man, that the projects is very traumatized, and I grew up out here in Concord Commons.
That's where I grew up.
Oh, you was in Concord? Yep. Yeah, man, I was out in Concord Commons, and man, it was just different, man. I want to say at first we were in Fairgrounds, right? Before Fairgrounds, my mom, we stayed in Arbor Manors with my auntie, my great auntie. Yeah. And then after we left Fairgrounds, after a few months or so, we ended up going to Concord. And man, when I tell you, I want to throw this out there though. Like when I stayed in the projects, I have never met any realer individuals than out in the projects, man. Like that was like my brothers for sure. And even to this day, one of them is like my best friend. My great grandmother and his great grandmother used to stay right next door to each other. You know what I'm saying? It was some duplexes by Arbor Manors.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They stayed right next door, and we been knowing each other for damn near, you know, the sandbox. But it definitely put that, you know, just that cage in my mind. It's like, man, like, I just felt like I was always daydreaming. Like, I want to do this, but I always felt trapped, and I didn't feel like I was going to make it out of doing it. You know what I'm saying? So whenever I would leave the projects and maybe go to a cousin's house,
right.
I had a cousin that stayed in Love's Park. Man, it felt like I was on vacation, even though I was in the same city.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But that's just how it traumatized you as a child, man. And it really, I ain't really had no hope, man.
Yeah. And I will say this too, Q, though. I didn't realize that I was being traumatized while I was in it. You know, I didn't realize until I got older when my behavior started to come up, and it was a result of being in that type of environment for so long.
Yeah.
And so now I'm in an environment where it's somewhat what they clean, and here I am coming in dirty, right? And so my behaviors was erratic, man. They were just out of control because I didn't know how to act outside of my environment, because I always thought my environment was everywhere I went. And that wasn't the case. So, you know, for me to be able to step outside of my environment and be somebody different, I didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah, it programmed you, man.
Exactly.
Like for me, I was more so embarrassed about bringing company to the project. Because it's like, man, I knew how to deal with it mentally, but they didn't necessarily know how to deal with that mentally. It's like, man, how can I? It's like, man, cuz I fuck with you, cuz. But it's like, man, how can I sit here and bring you to my house when I know when you go to the bathroom or you go to the kitchen and flick them lights on, all them roaches finna scatter, man. How you finna perceive that, or how you finna go back and tell your mom that you seen all these roaches, and then next thing you know, the family talking about it.
Yeah, but that's why you always closer to the ones that stay in the projects too.
Yeah, that's why they understand it. We was both in all of us was in the same environment. The same way I got roaches, you got roaches.
Exactly.
I got mice, you got mice.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I heard the same gunshot. You know what I'm saying? The next day we talking about the gunshot.
Exactly.
And man, it was just a different level of it was just a different level of connection there, man. Like I ain't never felt connected with people outside of my relatives than the individuals I grew up with in the projects, man.
The only thing with that too is like, because you feel that connection, you have this hope for them too. You know what I mean? Like we all get it. Let's all get it. But sometimes they don't get it and you get it, and now they're looking at you like you strange, like you don't belong anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like who are you? Like I'm still the same. Yeah, but you know, if they don't grow, and then they don't expect you to grow either. Some people are like that.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's absolutely true, man. So before we wrap it up, man, there's one thing I want to ask, man, before we go ahead and close the episode is, what do you feel? Why do you feel why is it so hard for us to be able to reach out for help whenever we need it?
When you say we, who are you speaking of?
The Black community.
Black community?
Yeah, the Black community.
Well, to be honest with you, again, it's historical. Like we were taught that if we spoke up and said certain things, you know, the white people would use it against us. It even goes back to where we weren't allowed to read, right? We always had to hide those attributes of, oh, I can read, I know what you're talking about, I understand what you're talking about. And so now we're still, again, this is the historical piece, is how we still feel like we're still back in that time where we got to hold and say we can't read anymore, or we're not capable of these things. And so it's time right now where we're flourishing as a people, and educational, achieving wise, you know, just being able to command a room. We're doing these things now, and we don't have that confidence that we should, because we've been sheltered for so long. And
then another thing, man, before you know, just to add on top of what you were saying, before we even started filming, we brung up the fact that people don't know how to be to themselves.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if you are always around people, always commingled with different energies,
Yeah.
it'll be extremely difficult for you to be able to find those dark places within you.
Yeah, I think we're afraid. I think we're afraid of those dark spaces because it's really scary to go back as you're sitting alone. Go back and think about the nights that you didn't have anything to eat, or the nights that you're the rats and the roaches and the things of that nature. And you're thinking about the sexual abuse that uncle did or auntie did. I mean, it's hard for you to sit with yourself when all those things has happened to you because you don't know what to do with them.
Right.
You just like, okay, I got these emotions and I got these thoughts. What now? And so it stifles us, it sticks us, it keeps us steady to where we're not talking about these things because we're embarrassed and we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, man. I think, man, in my fault, man, I'm gonna add this last thing.
No,
man.
you good, man. I'm with you.
Man, we gotta stop being afraid of approaching and reflecting on us, man, because that's the only way to grow in this lifetime.
I'm gonna throw a term out there, Q. It's called emotional intelligence.
Absolutely,
Emotional
yeah.
intelligence is the ability to check in with yourself, with your emotion, to make sure that you are good and be able to know what those are and label them. And then also to be able to converse with someone else and understand where they're coming from, their plight. And so we have to make sure that we are tapping into those intelligence, because if we're able to understand and trust that we're healing from whatever process we went through, and then the other person, I think we'll be in a better space. But we can't be afraid of those emotions that they're unknown. We got to tap into that, the inner child in us.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. Kevin, Mentality Unchained, man. Appreciate you for sliding to the thing successfully, bro.
Hey, man, I appreciate you reaching out, bro.
Man, peace, God. Yeah. Man, appreciate you,
Yes,
man.
sir. Anytime.
Man, we definitely got to link up sometime soon, man. Yo, without that being said, man, I'm going to close it out, y'all. Life is good. Life is wonderful. Be blessed to be alive. Self-sufficiency is how you survive. To the kings and queens, to the guys and goddess, forever and always, think successfully. Yeah.